This podcast is not sponsored or supported by any business or organization. The views reflected on these podcast episodes are my own. Please be aware I am not a medical expert, travel agent, or any other kind of expert. Hey everyone, welcome to the Eat, Explore, Love podcast. I'm Ashley. This podcast is based off of my blog of the same name, Eat, Explore, Love. It talks about the unique challenges in traveling around the world when you have celiac disease. Due to sort of popular demand, I decided to also record a podcast to delve a little deeper into my travels and the lessons learned along the way. Hi everyone, welcome to this podcast episode of Eat, Explore, Love, where I chat with television producer, novelist, and ancient history geek, Neil Laird. I loved getting to chat with Neil about his travels to the Middle East as a member of the LGBTQIA+ community, how those adventures inspired his stories, and the differences between producing for television and getting to write your own historical fiction. Only on this episode of Eat, Explore, Love. So, hi, Neil. Welcome to Eat, Explore, Love, the podcast. So excited to be able to speak with you today.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
I feel in my research of you, you've lived many lives and done a lot of really cool things and made best use of your time here on planet Earth. But I would love to hear in your own words who you are, how you would like to introduce yourself to me and to the listeners today.
Sure, I guess, like typical Americans, we start with what we do rather than who we are. So I'll follow the one. I'm a TV producer and turned novelist. And if one or two things has always driven my life is travel and ancient history. For whatever reason, those two things have loomed very large. And in both my careers, the impetus was really travel, particularly the Middle East and the ancient world and those kind of things. So I first started selling my thesis film in grad school about the Great Sphinx to Discovery Channel back in, like 1997, and made about 1,000 hours of television, nonfiction television for all the major networks in the US and UK. And then just recently, in the last couple of years, and we can talk a bit about that if you want, I've transitioned it to fiction novel writing based on my experiences as being a TV producer in the field, also gay and coming out when I was young. I have gay characters in the book, but also very much the Indiana Jones adventure stuff with a very comedic spin. And that's in a way the antidote for all those factual shows I did for 25 years.
So I guess, where did the love of travel start? Is it, for me, it was through reading actually my fiction books and watching The Sound of Music and, all the fun stuff. Was it for you learning history and just wanting to travel to the places that you learned about in
It
school?
was, and it's interesting that I've always been enamored of cinema.
Mm-hmm.
And as a little kid, and I grew up on all the epics. I can recite every line from Lawrence of Arabia, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly to you right now. I just watched those films over and over. So I already thought that I would be go into fiction filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my undergrad degree in that, and then at Temple University in Philadelphia. And then I moved up to New York. This is the late 80s. This is a long time ago, thinking I would become, the great filmmaker overnight. And instead, I was the poor schlub holding a walkie-talkie in the back of a grip truck at 2 a.m, making sure no one stole it. So it's quite dispiriting. And I had a lot of time between jobs, so I had nothing really to do and no money. So I started hanging out at the New York Public Library. And then one day I plucked a book off the shelf about the rise of early civilizations, which I did not get in my small Catholic school. I was out of Pittsburgh. And some penny dropped. And I was just so enamored of this world that I didn't know about that I resolved to teach myself the rise of civilization through the New York Public Library. And then it got to ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia and that area, and I got stuck. I became so fascinated, so obsessed that really impelled my next move, which is I just screw it. And I started backpacking. I said, I'm not going to wait, for them to call about Toxic Avenger 4 production assistant job. I'm just going to go wander until the little money I have runs out. And that's what I did. I wandered through all of the Middle East for about 8 or 9 months and came back heading in the clouds and saw all the great ruins. Went to Egypt. Egypt's my sweet place. I just love Egypt and have since been back dozens of times. And I just resolved a way to find a career that allowed me to go back there and get paid to do it. So I went back to grad school and made a documentary about the Sphinx, as I mentioned, and been doing it ever since.
That is incredible. And there's so much to unpack in what you just said. You and I have this in common. I am also a producer. I started out in television and then went into the advertising route.
You're wise. There's more money in advertising.
Yes. So thank you. I can't wait for my parents to hear that. So, because my father is very upset and why I won't go back to Hollywood and that I would be a millionaire if I did that. So thank you
Oh
for
yeah,
that
yeah,
statement.
yeah. Talk to the millionaires who lost all their money the last couple of years, and your dad will take it all back.
Yes, exactly. So my a lot of people don't understand what a producer does. So, can you explain to the folks when you're doing something nonfiction and you're on the road and such,
Yeah.
what does your title of producer mean? Because there's now so many editors are now
There's so
calling
many
themselves
different monikers.
producers.
Producers,
Yeah.
yeah. In feature films, a producer, particularly executive producer, which I am now,
Hmm.
is the guy who gives up money or the woman that gives up money. That in nonfiction is a very different thing. A
Hmm.
producer is the director, the writer,
Yes.
the creative person. They call them a producer. So you can start as an associate producer, which is the gopher. So then you go a show producer, which is I started in one episode. Then become a showrunner, or series producer, or executive producer, and then I jumped to the networks and spent a dozen or so years on the network side, sort of being the one who sent you in the field and gave you notes on it.
Yeah.
The bad guy at the network, the guy in the suit that told you everything you had done wrong. I became that guy.
Yeah.
So, but producing in general, yeah, and fiction films or nonfiction films are very different because depends on if it's an independent longitudinal film that you're shooting somebody around, a verite film, and you follow them for 8 years and you make it up as you go. In television, we have very small budgets and very small schedules, so a lot of pre-scripting. You
Hmm.
do a lot of work shooting script, they call it, even before you go in the field. Invariably, you'll find stuff that will take you in different directions, and that's what editing is for. But I think one of the things that surprises a lot of people when I tell them about what a nonfiction producer does is just how much is already pre-baked before you go in the field.
Yeah. What was because for me, I also, a part of my background, I volunteered at the Anne Frank Center, and part of why they hired me was they wanted a film student that was going to watch the films that they were going to do for their film festival and make sure that they were kosher and good and whatnot. But also, I documented a lot of survivor stories as well as the children's stories of what was it like being raised by someone that had survived the Holocaust.
Oh
And
wow.
it was very interesting, the different directions that we thought that we were going to be getting a certain type of answer and a certain type of what have you from the people that we were interviewing, and it turned out to be something completely different and way more impactful, actually. So can you talk to me a little bit about, I think the biggest thing when I tell people about what it means to be a producer to me is, being able to go with the flow and being prepared for all the different scenarios and ways things are going to go wrong or differently than how you anticipated. So, if you're nonfiction, yes, as much of it as possible is going to be mapped out, but I'm sure you're going to pick up gems along the way that you didn't really expect to get. So, can you
Yeah.
tell me an instance of where that happened, where in your travels, where you had to be able to adapt and it turned out way better than you could have anticipated?
Way better is often different. I mean, I think
Yeah.
sometimes say things become more emotional. I can tell you more stories about when it didn't. It's like, oh bloody hell, what I
Yeah.
wrote would have been a lot better than what I got.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my very first shot, I'll tell you a good one and a bad one if you want.
Yeah.
But one of the ones that turned out much better was my very first film, this one about the Great Sphinx, which is ancient history now in my life as well. And it was supposed to be about a restoration of the Great Sphinx.
Mhm.
And when I got the okay to do it, all the cheap people that I knew in Egypt and were giving me free permits and stuff. I went there thinking it'd just be an engineering show. And while I was there talking to the Egyptologists and the archaeologists who were restoring it and the engineers, down on the foot of the hill, have you been to Egypt?
I have not.
Right being the Giza Plateau is where the three great pyramids are on the Sphinx,
Mhm.
and just below used to be for years it was the stables where you hired the horses to ride around as a tourist. When I was back there shooting, while we're in the middle of shooting, one of my archaeologists said, "Oh, you want to bring your camera and come over here? We got something new." And we went down, and they just found a series of tombs that were for the workers of the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx.
Wow.
4,500 years old they've been missing, and no one knew about it. And the way they found it was one of the horses coming back to the stable fell through a hole in the sand, and they suddenly opened up a tomb that was a regular worker for 4.5 millennia ago that no one knew about. Right below a bunch of horses that sort of changed the way we interpret who the builders of the pyramid and the Sphinx were, because the tombs showed that they were well fed, that they all had enough money to make tombs. They weren't necessarily slaves, though I'm sure they had a tougher life. Their backs were hunched and stuff. But what was amazing about it, because we were there, we were able to shoot it. It's, oh, just come and shoot it. We need the documentation of it. As long as you agree to use the footage, to share the footage when you have it. We kind of became the de facto, recorders, the videographers for the archaeological dig. And it totally changed the film. And I came back and I'd already sort of filmed about the Great Sphinx, so I had to tell that story. But adding this stuff about who the builders of the Great Sphinx were and what their everyday life was like was such a richer, such a more evocative tapestry to tell, that it was a much better film for having just been there at the right time at the right place.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's a good one, yeah.
And did you want to tell
one? I'll talk about it real quick.
Did you want to tell that one?
And then, people always have to hear the bad stories. When you come back from a trip, people don't want to hear about the glorious sunsets, the amazing food. They want to hear about how you got dysentery in Delhi, or how you got stuck, for 12 hours in a hut somewhere in Ghana. Those are stories people want to hear. So people love the screw up stories. So I did a show years ago called Deep Sea Detectives, History Channel show. It was always about two divers that dived on certain things. Again, very heavily pre-scripted. And this story was a particularly strong one for me because it had a social resonance. It was about a shipload of migrants sneaking in from Sri Lanka into Sicily during a storm. And it sank outside off of Sicily. And they think it sank because the captain put them all, I think it was 300 male immigrants. They put them on a small launch vessel to take them into shore. And they got them off the bay. And it was too heavy to capsize, and it went down and they all died. And then a few weeks later, some bodies started washing up on shore, and a reporter from La Repubblica in Rome did this expose talking about how it was all kind of being covered up. And he broke this big story. And it was great for us because they knew exactly where the coordinates was. He had documented with a sonar, side scan sonar and all that stuff. So we knew exactly where it was. So he invited us back. We went back. We went to Sicily. And as soon as we got to Sicily, it was clear they did not want us there. Mind you, this is the home of the mafia. They're behind everything.
Yep.
And our crew were pariahs, and we could barely get a place to stay. But we did manage to get the same boat driver to take us out to the spot we could dive at. Because the reporter was there, and he knew exactly what it was. He went there, and he went out there, and it was all gone. We had no show. We went there. Either one of two things happened. They forced this guy to take us to the wrong place, the coordinates, and hide it, or the mafia got there first and cleaned up their mess. But basically, we had no show. So the whole show was about what happened to the stuff. And it made for a far weaker show because, of course, we really couldn't say, we couldn't prove it even happened because, they had some ROV footage from the first trip, but we could do nothing. We had professional gear, thousands of dollars. It was very expensive, a whole crew, underwater housing. We went out there. We were going to spend 4 or 5 days diving it. We spent 2 days, what they call mowing the lawn, going back and forth on the water, back and forth, and finding nothing but coral and plastic bags. So it was a total show. The show never aired because we came back, we tried to patch it together, and there was no there.
Yeah.
So it was probably about $400K badly spent.
But at least you got to go to Sicily.
It doesn't happen often, but it happens.
Yeah.
Again, that's the danger of pre-scripting because you think you know what you're going to get, and you get there, and
right.
You got to think on your feet and change it if it happens.
Yeah, which that's almost the fun part of the job at times.
If you come up with a solution,
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to I don't know about you. It's hard for me to turn that part of my brain off in my personal life where I'm always thinking 10 steps ahead of everybody else, thinking of all the ways it could go wrong and planning A through Z, and then I can relax.
The producer, all my friends, many of my friends are producers and again, director, writers, or whatever. And you can tell a producer when you walk in the room because we start managing everything.
Yeah.
Someone sends a text, to the pizza guy. Oh, why are you 10 minutes late? No, say it this way. Why don't you start with the 10 minutes? It's stronger than I'm texting the bloody pizza guy. That's what a producer. We're always problem solving, even when there are no problems.
Yes. It makes me feel better that that's just part of the personality and that it will
Yeah, it's
never
just
go
it's just who we are for better or worse. We get shit done, but we annoy a lot of people along the way.
Yeah. Oh, well. So I'm someone that I have not been to Egypt or anywhere in the Middle East, but I just went to Ephesus and seeing there. I've been to Pompeii. I've been to Herculaneum. I actually liked Ephesus more than the rest of the places that I've been to. But I feel for me when I go, I'm like, oh well, it's just a bunch of rocks that they're somehow putting back together again. These and that's cool, but there's only so much I could do and look at those
Right,
things
you're
and
like
stare
most
at
people.
them.
You get ruined out. My husband is like that. It's like I'm staring at the same upturned stone for 20 minutes, getting excited. This is 18th Dynasty Egypt. He goes, all I know is it's hot and I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Let me go.
So does the fact that your work and you finding out all these stories and being able to have all these discoveries along the way help fuel you, or is this just your Roman
Oh,
Empire
no,
literally?
it absolutely fuels me
Yeah.
because I have such a passion, particularly with that work. But I'm also, it's surprising, I've been to 70 some countries. I'd never been to Pompeii until last year. And it was such an amazing experience because, as we mentioned, I wrote a novel, Primetime Travelers, which is out now. And the sequel is about to come out in a few months. It's called Primetime Pompeii.
Okay.
So it's about a film crew that travels through time. The first time they go through ancient Egypt and the 12 gates of the underworld. So it's
Okay.
sort of comedic and
Yeah.
joking. And then they go back to Pompeii. So having not been to Pompeii, I spent 3 weeks. I rented a villa near Pompeii.
Okay.
And what I would do is get up in the morning and write. And then I would take the subway or the train to Pompeii and wander around. And it was just so evocative and just so eye opening. I would write stuff down and then go home and write it into my script, write it into my story. I found the villa of Julia Felix I never heard of, and then went back and she became a big character in the book.
Yeah.
I talked to archaeologists that I know there about the eruption hour by hour, and I wrote that all down. So I was fact finding in the morning or the afternoon, and then writing it into a novel the next day. And it was such an invigorating, exciting way because it all felt fresh and right there for me. And so I look back now and I say I wrote the first draft in 3 weeks, and of course went through several drafts after then. But it came so quickly, I think, because I was so inspired by the
Mhm.
landscape and just doing that. And I also wrote overlooking the Bay of Naples, watching the sunset every day. And I was part of that milieu and part of that atmosphere in that world. And that totally inspires me. I'm going off to Turkey in 2 weeks
Oh,
to
wow.
write the third one, Primetime Troy.
Okay. So what is it that you pick a location and then you kind of the story comes thereafter, or what's the order that that typically comes in?
Yeah, I mean, usually there's an inciting incident or something, and I'm still trying to work through the Troy one right now. I'm, reading the Iliad again and talking to some archaeologists. I've been to Troy many times, but Troy itself is not very. If you've been there, it's not very evocative.
Hmm.
It ain't no Ephesus. It's just a bunch of boring ruins on a field. You'd be bored shitless if you went to Troy.
Yeah.
If you skipped it, you did yourself a favor. But no, I forgot what the question was. What was the question?
Well, what comes first? Do the trips that you've taken inspire the story, or does the
Yeah,
story come
sometimes it's
first?
just you just need a match to light that fire. So, for example, beyond knowing I wanted to do this a follow up sequel, Primetime Troy or Primetime Pompeii, had the same characters, a four camera crew that goes back. So I knew who they were, but I needed a way to kind of get in. And often it is one article that I found. I'm also trying to find gay stories about ancient gays that have a positive effect. I
Mhm.
do a YouTube and a TikTok channel called Gay Underscore History, where I talk about famous gays in history that you didn't know about, from Julius Caesar to Richard the Lionhearted or whatever. And there was an article that I came across when I was doing the research for Pompeii that made it all come together. And if you've been to Pompeii, so you know if you go through the main entrance, the amphitheater entrance, there's all the plaster casts there right next to the little gift shop.
Yeah.
Get your little cute little mouse pads with exploding, volcanoes, and next door you see all the dead people that actually had a very different experience than we did.
Yeah.
But there was one plaster cast which was found in the 1890s, a long time ago. And the plaster casts are not actually the bodies, but they're a hole that's filled because of the evaporated bodies from the heat of the pyroclastic flow. And they was long called the two maidens. And I don't know if you remember you were there, but it's two people clutching each other.
Okay.
They're in embrace and they died together.
Mhm.
One has their head on the other's chest and their legs entwined below. And they long assumed it was a mother and daughter because that's kind of what a mother and daughter would do at the very end. And then they were able to do CAT scans and DNA tests a few years ago, and they discovered not only were they both male, but they neither were related to one another.
Oh, okay.
Now we didn't know the story. There could have been a shopkeeper who just ran into somebody, and just as a flow came along, they hug each other, or it could be two gay men
Yeah.
who were fleeing together, two lovers who got stuck in an alleyway, and at the very end they held each other tight, and that's how they were preserved for the last 2,000 years.
Yeah.
That was my story. So once I
Oh, that's
figured that out,
awesome better.
I figured out everything kind of so they go back in time, like Jared Plummer, my hero, and his crew, to find out the identity of these two embracing lovers and how they were and who they were, and give them name again, give them voice again. So
Okay.
once I did that, the other mysteries kind of fell into place. But at least I had that A story to give them the mystery, the inciting incident, as they call it in fiction, to get them moving.
And you found that story for yourself once you went and visited and spent those 3
No,
days?
no, no. This is before. Once I started realizing I wanted to do Troy. So of course the first thing I did when I went there is I went to that and looked at that.
Yeah.
And then I went 4 or 5 times, and I kept going back and looking at it again and noticing new details. And of course, it's, the great thing about writing a novel versus my day job, which I guess writing a novel is also my day job, is that I can make shit up.
Yeah.
It's fiction. So I give you who the identity of them are in the book. There's no way to prove it. There's no way to prove they're even gay.
Yeah.
You can't. You can't preserve sexuality or emotion clearly.
Yeah.
So, but in a novel you can do whatever you want because it's all sort of fantasy. It's about time travel. So already you're playing with logic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so often is one of those, and I have a few ideas with Troy that I'm trying to figure out. It's not just the archaeological; it's just kind of about I'm going to deal with Achilles and Patroclus and the love affair there, and see if I could do a new spin on that. So, but I won't know it till I get there, and I often just the first draft is just verbal diarrhea that just comes out that I later on try to figure out if there's anything in there worth preserving. But until I get it on paper, I don't know.
So I have an ignorant question, and if you don't want to talk about this, we can cut this from the episode. But you talk about going to the Middle East, and you're obviously talking about you are part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And to me, it's a symbol of bravery at a time in this world in modern day and back in the time when you were going as a man part of the LGBTQIA community to go and travel to the Middle East. There could be me just being ignorant and not being formally educated and what the view is
It's a
over
fair
there.
question.
Go ahead.
It's a fair question, and certainly, I mean, get homophobia. All you can do is wander through Tennessee and get the same hate as you would in southern Egypt.
Right.
There's no question that there's a lot of the traditional people are very anti-queer. A couple things to say about that. One is often when you travel to the destinations like Egypt or Turkey, Ephesus,
Mhm.
whatever, even though they're Muslim, you're very much in the realm of mass tourism.
Mhm.
And they don't want, and they know you're only there for a fortnight and you're going home. So they don't want to rock the boat. They want you to get your money and get on. And also, too, I do find on an individual level, people are far less um, discriminatory than they would be as a group. It's usually a small local minority that's screaming the loudest,
Right.
and often more towards them. Now, I do know that, like for example, in Cairo, and I have some gay friends in Cairo who warned me, if you're going to Cairo, don't go on any of the gay pickup apps because they
Right.
entrap you there. The cops will try to track you down, and you meet at a cafe to meet somebody, and there's three guys in uniforms. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that does happen. Usually more for the locals than it is for the foreigners, because once again we're already decadent and dismissed. But at the same time, I think to me, I've never had any gay hate lobbed to me, and I've been to Syria and Iran and some places that
Okay.
are much more traditional. What I do find more frequently, particularly if I'm traveling alone, if I'm just doing a reconnaissance or I'm just backpacking alone or whatever, is I get hit on all the time by men.
Mm.
And I think it's because you're only there for a few weeks and you're going home, so you can't hit on somebody down at the mosque, but you can hit on some decadent American who's going to go back. But it also suggests the repression that these men are under,
Mhm.
that they have to hide behind a temple wall somewhere in Luxor and wait for any male to come by, and they have very crude gestures on how they want to it's in spaces you can imagine. But I think it speaks more towards about their own difficulties of expressing their attractions than anything else.
Yeah.
And of course, I never would pursue any of them. A, because it's just too creepy, and B, is because like it could be entrapment. You never know who's really
Right.
behind. But I do see more of the repression than I do see of the aggression.
That's good to hear. Because I know traveling and it's not the same thing. It's two very different things, but traveling solo as a female, and I'm a very tiny person, I see more of like the creepiness, but I have yet to have anything. And granted, I'm reading stories all the time where something more serious has happened to
Mhm.
solo female travelers, but I'm sure it's the same for you where you just have to have your guard up and you just have to trust your instincts at times.
Gotta
And
be wise. If I'm traveling with my husband, we go to a place called Kosh in Turkey several times. It's a beautiful resort down
Mhm,
near Antalya, and we just make sure we don't kiss on the pier, or
mhm.
those kind of things. You walk in somewhere, people can pretty much tell that you're a gay couple.
Yeah.
You don't hide that fact. You just mind your p's and q's.
Yes.
It's probably more difficult traveling as a solo woman
Mhm.
in the Middle East than it is a gay man. Because again, the masculinity, I guess, is some sort of barrier, however true or false.
Yeah.
But they won't tangle with that. But there's more straight men than gay men too. So the sexual advances to you are probably much more common than they would be to the 10% that are gay or whatever. Probably higher than that. But
Thank you for being willing to share that. And are we so also tell me the importance because I'm very excited to start reading your books because I and going onto your TikTok and hearing about the ancient members because I always heard about Alexander the Great was probably gay and all these other people in history, and I've always been incredibly interested, and I feel like the more we talk about these stories and the less taboo they are, then hopefully it
yeah,
helps break down the ignorance that is still somehow with us today in 2024.
very
So,
much so. And the pendulum maybe going back the other direction, right? Exactly. So I'm sorry, I couple your questions. So what was your question?
no, I just tell me about is that the reason of why it's so important to write these
Precisely,
fictionalized
precisely. I
versions?
think when I wanted to do the books, when I started doing the books, I realized one of my unique things I can share is it wasn't even like, oh, I'm out to. It's not like it's an expose or I'm out to like make some kind of diatribe about what it's like to be gay or gay
Mhm,
people in ancient Rome. It's just I wanted to have very normal normal characters who happen to be gay. Now, in the first book, Jared, the lead character, comes out, and
mhm,
that's a big thing, and it helps change him. But there's always a love affair. The second one, Kara, the lesbian camera woman from the Bronx, she falls in love with someone in Pompeii. In Troy, it'll be somebody else. I always want to have a positive gay characters in there, and I think the gay underscore history stuff at TikTok and elsewhere, so few people know about gay life back then. The key thing that there's one thesis that runs through almost all of the videos that I've done about ancient history is that in many ways was better then than now.
yeah,
Where and I didn't want to go down a road of religion because I'm not sure what you believe, what you follow, but it all kind of started with Christianity.
mhm,
Christianity in the fourth, fifth century, and all the shame that came out of that the pagan religions were much more open about that. There was no word for gay in these early cultures. Greece, of course, had the culture of pederasty, and in ancient Egypt, I tell this story all the time, so I'll preface it here in case you heard on some other podcast, whatever. But one of my favorite places in Egypt is a place called the Tomb of the Brothers
mhm,
in Saqqara, and it's such a ridiculous name because it's clearly two gay guys who went out together. You look at the frescoes, and they're all nose to nose with the Egyptian form of kissing. They're holding hands, they're laughing. They have spent eternity together. That's it. And the key thing about that, beyond it's just two happy gay men who decide to get married or is that they were an elite, rich people working for the pharaoh. So that means in fourth century or 4,500 years ago, in sixth dynasty Egypt, it was okay to be gay and be buried together. You had the elite, you had the pharaoh's blessing. So
mhm,
while there's no written negative or positive about homosexual relationships, the mere fact that this tomb is in spitting distance from the Step Pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Djoser, this is the primus real estate. All the gods are here. You have a pathway to the field of reeds if you're buried here. And these two loving gay men who worked for the pharaoh, one was a manicurist for the pharaoh, the other was a
mhm.
hairdresser for the pharaoh. So, as a gay man, I can say there's more proof
Yeah.
without stereotypes. But it's a loving, beautiful tomb. And again, it tells you that at that time, at least, it was okay.
So have you through your research, is it fair to say that we've gone more backwards than we've of I think that my generation feels that we've evolved and we're so much more whatever about it, but it sounds like in ancient times we were even better than we are perhaps right
What if
now.
you look again? Probably if you and I got transported back to fourth century Greece or whatever, we'd probably be horrified about the filth and the dysentery, and we'd both be arrested for something. I'm sure times are better in terms of some of the individual rights that we have, but in terms of sexuality, at least,
Hmm.
it feels like there wasn't that term. There certainly wasn't any kind of isolation or any kind of abuse in that large regard. There might have been, in terms of like by Roman times. I just did one of my videos on Julius Caesar yesterday, and it was rumored that he hooked up with King Nicodemus of Turkey around Istanbul before he became the great Caesar, because he went over there basically to raise a fleet for his army, and he stayed a bit long. He kind of moved in, with the king, and they clearly were best of buddies for a while. So long that they started calling him the Queen,
Uh,
Caesar. And again, there's a rhyme or a song that is preserved about Caesar, which kind of shows you, at least in Roman times, how it evolved, the negativity towards homosexuality that may or may not existed earlier. The rhyme is something, or the line is, Caesar laid low the Gauls, but Nicodemus laid low Caesar,
hmm.
which means, A, clearly they had a sexual relationship, but more importantly, that means that of the sexual position, Caesar was the bottom. He was a receptive partner.
Right.
That's bad. It's okay to be top, because then you hang on to your masculinity. But by Caesar's time, by Roman times, if you want to make fun of somebody, you call them a receptive partner. That's the feminine side.
Okay.
So already in the sexuality, those kind of things were developing in a way they hadn't in Greece and in Egypt and Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and the earlier cultures as much. But once again, you could do it. You could do it to your hearts. It's just you have to, suffer maybe some joking down at the gym when they find out, what your predilections lie.
That's
Or it can be used in this case as probably political mudslinging, against
right.
Caesar, some of his opponents. But again, it's one of those little things that shows you, even back then, you still had to kind of be careful how you present yourself.
Right.
So were times better? That all depends on what you look. Certainly in terms of love and sexuality, I think we have gone backwards. But I'm also married to my husband, legally married to my husband,
Yeah.
which would not be possible back in ancient times too.
Right.
So yes, progress marches forward, then takes a big leap back.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to prevent myself from going on a tirade with that,
Yeah,
but I'm trying to mind my P's
you're
and
welcome
Q's.
to. It's certainly, yeah.
Do you How therapeutic is it, to be able to write and have control over your writing, whereas being a television producer, to the stories you told earlier, there's not so much control over what happens, and you don't this you have a little bit more of a say in what the outcome is, and you have a little bit
You
more
do.
control along the
You're
way.
still you're still serving masters.
Mhm.
I'm self-publishing because I wasn't comfortable with traditional publishing deal, and it was just easier to get them out there and tell my own stories in my own
Mhm.
way. But of course, if you want people to read, like, for example, one of the groups has been a response to the Primetime Travelers, and they've been wonderful on Facebook and other groups. They've been my ARC readers, advanced reader copies. They've got out there and helped pitch the book, give me great reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. They've really been a very strong, and that's the romance community, male to male. It's
Okay.
actually, so John, if you look at my cover, if you buy my book, you'll see it's a satirical romance or adventure. I forget
Mhm.
what word I use. And they come with tropes you have to follow, though. And two of the tropes that I did tweak in the book to make sure that the readers are satisfied was, you can tell a slow burn story of gay or queer love inside. It's okay. It doesn't have to be spicy. It doesn't have to be anything other than just a positive story. But the book has to begin and end with the lovers, and it has to have a happy ending.
Oh, okay.
Go to the person who doesn't give a happy ending in an book. They want them to be happy at the end of the book.
Okay.
So again, I can choose not to do that because it's self-publishing. But again, if I want to get a reader, I have no problem with that, because I want to create positive stories of gays and
Right.
and Jared and his life. So it was easy to do that. But that's the one tweak I made for the market,
Yeah.
and I'm sure I'll do others. There's only the first book out, and I've already had a few changes I'll do to Pompeii once I find out what the characters like, what they didn't. But I suppose it's no different in television, where you kind of give the audience what they want, except it's more corporate,
Yes.
much more at stake. Financially, it's much more expensive to make a film or
Mhm.
a documentary than it is a book.
Right.
It's just it's the editing cost and the time cost and the publishing of the paperback and uploading and those kind of things. And you can do that for a couple grand,
Right.
as opposed to I worked for Shark Week for years. Every episode of Shark Week was about $1 million for an
Right.
hour of television. Just sharks swimming around in the Atlantic over and over again.
Do you still work in television and do go back and forth, or do you feel
I'm
that
now
writing is
freelance.
a
I'm now
path?
freelance. Yeah, I went freelance
Okay,
last year when the books came out, and I've been doing that since then. Yeah.
that's
So,
incredible.
and also because again, partially, truth be told, it wasn't that it wasn't a choice. There's so many knock-on effects of the streaming world that my channel, this science channel, went away last year. So I was laid off with the entire staff of the science channel as well as Animal Planet. 800 of us were laid off in one day or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
so the timing was good because I wanted to get back in the writing, but of course you do lose that wonderful fat paycheck.
Yeah.
So I just finished a History Channel project that I just did, a writing project, a freelance project, a 2-month project or whatever, and then I'm going off to Turkey and have a few things potentially lined up for the fall when I get back. So I'm back to that freelance world where I started. It's not lucrative as it was being an exec at the network, but I love the writing so much. I am so much down the rabbit hole of writing and all that kind. I can't wait to get to that little villa on the Aegean Sea and start writing next week. So
Yeah.
you have to balance
Yeah. Yeah.
creativity versus the
Being able to pay your bills.
mortgage.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I've taken up a lot of your time, and I feel like we could talk for years and years and years about everything in your life stories. But before I let you go, could I just ask you a couple rapid fire questions in the vein of Eat, Explore, Love? So, what is your favorite food city that you've visited,
Favorite food city?
or the best food that you've had in a particular city?
Would probably be Mandalay, Myanmar. The
Okay.
Burmese food is amazing. Anything got off the street was just phenomenal. I fly back there just to go to Mandalay and eat noodles for a month.
It's good to know. Do you prefer a vacation that requires you to be active or relax?
Oh, active. I can't sit still for more than 10 minutes.
Uh, Very producer like of you. Uh,
Yeah, exactly. We still have half the island to see. Hurry up, people.
yeah, exactly. I have a schedule to attend to.
Right, exactly.
What is the city where you learned the most about yourself?
Probably Cairo,
Hmm.
because that was such an eye-opening experience going to Egypt and spending great time in Cairo and meeting all the people and the behind the scenes of the Cairo Museum and discovering archaeology and that stuff. It's a special, noisy, lousy, chaotic, polluted city that I absolutely adore.
Yeah. When I go, eventually, I'll have to connect with you, and you'll have to tell
Yeah,
me.
let me know. I'll give you some names.
Perfect. And my last question: where can the people find you?
You can find me. The book, Primetime Travelers, can be bought on Amazon. That's where that in Kindle. That's where I'm selling it right now. Or you can go to neollaird.com, and then just see. I have a newsletter out that talks I have short stories that I put up on there and talk about places that I'm going, and it's a newsletter that comes out. I'll be making videos on TikTok and stuff when I'm in Turkey every day. What it's like to write a book in Turkey and where do you buy your olives or whatever else I decide to do, whatever, to try to get people aware of the location and the stories that I'm doing. So
And give me the TikTok handle one more time.
it's gay_history, and then
Perfect.
I think on Instagram it's maybe Ancient History, gay Ancient History.
Okay, perfect. And we'll have the links to all those
Oh
places
yeah,
and things in the show notes so that people can find you more easily. But
fantastic.
it was a pleasure speaking with you, and I
No,
love
fantastic.
learning
Thanks.
from you. And I'm sure this will not be the last conversation that we have. So,
Inshallah, as they say inshallah means everybody says it in Egypt all the time. Yeah, God willing.
yes, yes. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Neil. Till next
All
time.
right, cheers. It's been a pleasure. Cheers.
Thank you so much for listening. I love getting to learn from all of my guests, but especially Neil today. He taught me so much, and I'm so appreciative. And I can't wait for the next time we have him on the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Till next time. Thank you for joining me this week for all the fun journeys and lessons learned on my big adventure called life. For more information on the different cities discussed, check out the blog posts on eatexplorelove.com, posted every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you have any questions or fun stories to share, feel free to reach out at hieatexplorelove@gmail.com. Until next week, remember to eat well, explore the world, and love yourself. See you next time. This episode is produced, scripted, and edited by me, Ashley. Special thanks to Sarah Mienka.